All right, let's get right into it. For more than a decade, Katy Perry has been this massive part of pop culture. You know, the larger-than-life character with the candy-colored wigs and those hits that were absolutely everywhere. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a really fascinating story, one that suggests the icon we all know was less of a discovery and, well, more of a design. So let me just start with this one big question. What if the entire Katy Perry phenomenon, everything from I Kissed a Girl to Firework, wasn't really the story of an artist, but the story of a marketing campaign? What if the person you thought you knew was actually meticulously built, branded, and then sold to the world? And that, right there, brings us to the core idea we're exploring. Katy Perry wasn't just found, she was engineered, literally built from the ground up by the music industry to be loud, lovable, and just absolutely impossible to ignore. And you know what? The most compelling evidence for this often comes from the artist herself. I mean, that quote says it all, doesn't it? It reveals this huge conflict in her own words, the tension between the persona, Katy Perry, and the person, Katherine Hudson. To really understand how deep this goes, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. See, long before all the spectacle, before the hit machine was even plugged in, there was this young singer-songwriter from California named Katherine Hudson. And this is where her story truly begins. Her musical roots, they weren't in pop music at all. They were in faith. She was raised by two pastors, so her entire world was shaped by the church. Music wasn't about glamour. For her, it was about gospel. She started singing in her parents' ministry and even began writing her own songs on a guitar when she was just 13 years old. With her parents' blessing, she actually moved to Nashville to chase a career in Christian music. And in 2001, at only 17, she released her debut album simply titled Katy Hudson. It was this collection of really sincere, earnest Christian rock songs. But commercially, it was a total failure. The label went under, and it became pretty clear that this particular path was a dead end. This quote right here, it perfectly captures the massive disconnect between where she started and where she ended up. Her original mission was all about authenticity and her faith. She wanted to connect with God through her music. Just keep that in mind, because the contrast with what comes next is pretty staggering. So the failure of that first album, it became the catalyst for one of the most dramatic transformations in modern pop music history. Katherine Hudson was about to be completely, and I mean completely, reinvented. Now, this did not happen overnight. She moved to LA and spent years just kind of lost in the industry wilderness. She worked with huge producers like Glenn Ballard and The Matrix, even recorded whole albums that just never saw the light of day. She was dropped, she was shelved, she was told to be like other artists. It wasn't until 2007, when she finally signed with Capitol Records and they paired her up with the hitmaker Dr. Luke, that the formula for Katy Perry was finally cracked. You see, Dr. Luke had this signature style, a hit-making blueprint. His sound was built on these really specific elements, big synthetic drums, super catchy calm response hooks, and melodies that felt like they were scientifically engineered to get stuck in your head. He wasn't just making songs, he was manufacturing hits. I mean, just listen to California Girls right next to Keisha's TikTok. Both produced by Dr. Luke, and the similarities are just undeniable. The tempos, the vocal delivery, even the core rhythms, it's the same formula, just with a different artist plugged in. And Katy Perry, she became the ultimate poster child for the sound. And here it is, in her own words, the trade-off she made. It's a shocking thing to say, but it perfectly captures that radical departure from her gospel roots. The girl who wanted to be a Christian music star made a conscious decision to become something else entirely, all for the sake of fame. The transformation was complete. So with the formula locked in, the Katy Perry machine just went into overdrive. From about 2008 to 2012, she wasn't just a pop star, she was literally the definition of pop music. So how did it work so well? Well, the strategy was simple, but just ruthlessly effective. Her music used these bright, major chords to basically make you feel happy. The lyrics were simple, super repetitive, so they'd be stuck in your head after just one listen. And visually, it was all about pure escapism, a constant stream of fantasy and spectacle that made her seem larger than life. And the results were just staggering. The album Teenage Dream produced 5 #1 singles. 5. A feat that tied a record set by Michael Jackson's album Bad. This wasn't just success, this was total market dominance. The machine was working perfectly. But what happens when the machine you've built is for a world that doesn't really exist anymore? As the culture started to shift, the meticulously crafted persona of Katy Perry began to show its first signs of wear and tear. All of a sudden, this cultural collision started happening. The world began craving authenticity, realness and rawness. But the Katy Perry brand was built on polished fantasy and bubblegum pop. Her hyper-stylized image, which was once her biggest strength, started to feel, well, dated and a little out of touch. This all kind of came to a head with her 2017 album, Witness. It was her attempt to evolve, to talk about deeper themes, but the execution just felt confused. The public, who were so used to the pop icon, didn't seem to know who this new person was. The infallible hitmaker suddenly seemed a little lost. And in recent years, the signs have just kept coming. From bizarre PR moments like the whole Blue Origin spaceflight thing that was widely seen as a bit tone-deaf, to rumors of struggling ticket sales, the bulletproof armor of the Katy Perry persona has definitely cracked, and it's revealed a much more vulnerable person underneath. So this brings us to what feels like the final act of the story, this ongoing tension between the product the industry created and the person who actually has to live inside of it. This comparison really summarizes the entire journey, doesn't it? On one side, you have Katherine Hudson, the earnest gospel singer with a unique sound and a really personal message. And on the other, you have Katy Perry, the provocative pop icon with formulaic hits and a massive global brand. It really all boils down to this. Katherine Hudson wanted to say something. Katy Perry was designed to sell something. The mandate was to create hits, dominate the charts, and just generate revenue. And the space between that message and that mandate, that's where her entire story really lies. Her career is really a perfect case study of the music industry machine in action, how it builds, packages, and eventually discards its stars. So we're not just watching one person's career arc, we're actually seeing how the entire system works. Which leaves us with this one final, kind of lingering question. Maybe Katy Perry never really existed. Maybe she was just a projection of what the industry needed at a very specific moment in time. But Katherine Hudson, she's real. She's the girl with the guitar and a dream. And now that the noise is finally quieting down, we have to wonder, will we ever get to truly hear her again?